Hi, my name is Erica Elledge, and I've chosen to talk about option two of the final project, and I will be talking about three ways the media obstructs women in politics. I'll also be covering two ways I believe the media can act as a helpful tool for women in politics, and then I will be giving what I think would be helpful advice to a woman candidate. So, to start off, the first way that I think the media obstructs women in politics um, would be the coverage that they get during their campaigning. So, um, Fridkin and Kenny talk about that female senators are much less likely to hit the headlines of news stories, and they're quoted much less often in news articles um, in their hometown newspapers. So that's just an example right there. Also, I think a big problem is that not just the amount of coverage they're getting, but what they're getting coverage about. Usually it's not the important um, topics that most men, talk about, like foreign policy and national security, all of those things. The second thing that I think the media does to obstruct women in politics is having to do with the double bind problem. And that's a huge problem just for women in general, I think, but especially in politics, you have almost that double standard and pertaining to being, too feminine but too masculine, or too family oriented and not family oriented enough. So I think that's a huge issue. And the third way that I think the media obstructs women in politics is how much they focus on their appearance. As a woman, you kind of expect people to judge you on your appearance right away. In politics, you would hope that they would hold them to a higher standard, but they actually don't. A lot of times, that's what's being talked about instead of their actual political views. It's what they're wearing, what they're not wearing, their hair, their makeup. And I think that's a huge sexist issue. And it's not very good for politics. Even if they were discussing what men's appearances were, that wouldn't be good for politics either. Um, Next, I will be going over two things I think the media could do to help women in politics. The media is one of the biggest sources of information in the world. They control a lot of everything, honestly. So I think that they have the ability to do really good things for our political society. And the first thing that I think that they could do is back to the coverage of women. If they could make an effort to cover the appropriate topics for women instead of covering the things that aren't exactly relevant to what's going on. Also, if they could maybe set up a system where they gave everyone a pretty equal amount of coverage. There's leniency with um, who's, the incumbent, things such as that, but really to make sure if they could monitor making sure people are getting their names out there just as much as other people when it's well deserved, which a lot of times it is, but they still don't get that coverage that they deserve. Another thing that I think media could do to help benefit women in politics is stop concentrating so much on their private lives. You hear much more about the women in their private lives than you do the men in their private lives. An example, you look at Hillary Clinton, she gets so much backlash from her husband and his, discrepancy, and it still comes up today when the elections are coming up next year. But you don't hear much when it comes to him. Um, it's just one of those things that it's not exactly fair, and they're kind of held to a higher standard than the men are. And I think that it would be better if the media would kind of pull back on that. Another thing is we talked about how women are, don't want to run because they're concerned for, many reasons. We talk about how the issue with women and their families. I think one of the reasons that women are concerned about their families is not only the time that takes away from them, which is a big talk about it, but the media concentrates so much on the personal lives that I'm sure they wouldn't want their family so heavily involved in the media and so, have a microscope on them. Um, Way more than they should because it's not exactly relevant to politics. Um, or it shouldn't be relevant to politics. The last thing that I'm going to talk about is advice that I would give a woman candidate. Personally, I'm very interested in politics, and so is my family, so we're pretty straightforward with each other, and I think women need to, unfortunately, go into politics or the professional world not expecting a lot. And you won't get let down that way, and two, you'll be prepared. So, appearance wise, expect to be judged. Unfortunately, that's not something you want to have to concentrate on, but it is something you need to. So, I think that you should really take that into consideration. Um, and also, I think women need to really think hard before running um, because of their families, because it will take a lot of time. Politics is every day, all day. It's not a 9 to 5 job. So I think women need to be prepared for that. And you're going to have to take away time from your family, but hopefully you'll end up reaping the benefits in the long run. So I just think women need to sadly expect less when they're going into the political world, which hopefully one day will change. But now, for a candidate, I think they need to be mentally prepared for that kind of thing. So, but yeah, so that is my 3 things that I think the media does to obstruct women. And that's only 3 things. There are many more. And that's also 2 things that I think that they could adjust to help women in politics, or at least not hurt them. And then that's also some advice that I would give to a woman running for office, any office at all. So, yeah.